to continue in organizing such event, which is part of our promotional activities in order to strengthen the trade between Italy and US in the pharma. You should know that Italy in Europe is one of the first producers in the pharma. And at the same time, this is one of the main components of our export here in the US, the third component after the well-known mechanical and fashion. But the pharma is also a very relevant sector of attraction of foreign investments in Italy, and that's why we are organizing this event to show you what are the trends between our two industries. So I will leave the floor to our Consul General Sergio Strozzi and then to Antonino Laspina, and then we will enter into the round table moderated by our colleague and friend Brad Loncar. So thanks for attending.
Thank you very much, Alessandra. First of all, let me say it's a great honor for me to be here this evening. JP Morgan conference, we don't need to talk about that. It's a very crucial event worldwide, as much as if our healthcare and pharma industries are concerned. And we strongly wanted, as Consulate General of Italy in San Francisco, to organize today's event together with our colleagues from the Italian Trade Agency, Alessandra and Antonino, who will take the floor after me. Because we know that this event has been done in the past years, then the pandemic hit, and obviously we had sort of break, but we needed to wrap it up and take it back again together with you. This is a crucial sector for both Italy and the US. I'm talking about pharma and health tech. And this is a sector where Italy is leading in Europe more and more, thanks to the great companies, the very grown-up companies we have in Italy. And I'm in front of some of the most eminent representatives of the Italian industry in this sector. And I'm so glad that we can welcome all of you here, entrepreneurs, investors, all of them in the field of health tech and healthcare and pharmaceutical industry. We want to stress out that Italy can be a great partner, an outstanding partner for US companies and US investors in this field. And we would like this event today to be an occasion for you to mingle, to mix up, and to start a cooperation between our two countries. The other thing I wanted to tell you, and then I leave the floor to your colleague from New York, as Consul General of Italy in San Francisco, I'm so proud to welcome you here at the new Italian Innovation and Culture Hub. Nickname is Innovit, as you see, and the lobby is the one, well, right, yeah, close to Invitalia and Meet, and we've opened it, as Alessandro was saying, not last year, actually, 2 years ago, right now, 2023, so end of 2021, and it's a new concept for Italian institutions being abroad and promoting our business ecosystems and innovation ecosystems as well, especially. Inside the new Italian Innovation and Culture Hub, there are 3 subjects operating. The Innovation Center, which is run by a private company, and I'm glad to introduce to you the director of the Innovation Center at Innovit, Alberto Acito. Please wave so everyone can recognize you. It's a big challenge. We are starting acceleration program for Italian startups to contaminate with the Silicon Valley ecosystem very soon. The first batch will be in March. So please keep tuned and keep posted on the website of innovitasf.com to know more about our activity. The second subject is each the Italian Trade Agency with 2 desks, and then the third one is the Italian Culture Institute, because we believe very much, and this is typical Italian, since centuries probably, since Leonardo or something like that, we want to mix culture, education, scientific cooperation, and business. And that's why we created with the Italian government and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, specifically this place. I'm so glad to welcome you in So thank you very much to all of you for being here, especially the ones who are coming from New York. I already talked to some of them and I thank them, and our moderator, for example, Brad Loncar. Thank you very much for joining us. The investors I was talking to from the East Coast, from Silicon Valley as well, and enjoy the event and enjoy also the networking event we're going to have after this very interesting panel. Let me also thank, before I leave the floor to Antonino, Pierluigi Petrone, President, for co-organizing with us, and all the association, the Pharma Association from Italy, for co-organizing with us this event. I think we've made it. We were doubtful because there were so many problems, but we made it all together, and this means that when we are a team and we play in a team, we can succeed and we can make it. Grazie a tutti. Antonino Laspina, Director of the Italian Trade Agency Office in New York. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sergio. Well, I'm very happy, delighted to be here. I would like to welcome all of you to this event that is mainly characterized by what I call the continuity. As a matter of fact, we have been able to continue with this kind of activity that we started several years ago, which means is the opportunity for Italian companies to interact with relevant companies, investors on the occasion, and in coincidence with the JP Morgan healthcare event. In the past, this event was a kind of experiment that we have conducted. Today, as has been already mentioned by Sergio, by the Consul General here in San Francisco, is a kind of event that is signaling the maturity, if we want to say, of this event. Because we are here in a very important venue, is the Innovit, is the center, and we are coming here after a long journey through the innovation. Continuity means that is no more an occasional moment, the moment where the Italian Trade Agency and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are organizing events such as this one. We are coming from very important events, such as the one that we organized during the CES in Las Vegas. Everybody knows how important is this as a window for the technology and innovation. Italy was there with some 51 startups, and some of them were related to the healthcare. This means that innovation is, let me say, I would like to borrow an expression from Galileo Galilei, yet it moves. In Italy, innovation is moving very fast. And the result is positive because public and private are now working together. There has been a definition of a new scheme of collaboration. We have seen, for instance, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti to be involved in the promotion and financing of some activities related to the innovation. And an agency like the Italian Trade Agency, under the aegis of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, now is in a position to make sure to secure this kind of events, not only during the event like JP Morgan, but also in many other events. I would like to say, for instance, for San Diego Biotech or other events that are more and more of certain interest for the Italian companies. Having said that, I would like once again to thank all of you for coming here. I would like to thank the panelists. I'm sure that after this event, we are going to have some positive developments, and the Italian Trade Agency with the network offices here, the headquarters in Rome, and the professional people that are involved in our activity will be able to follow your expectations and to secure possible positive results for the future. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks.
Isn't this a beautiful location? Great place to have an event. So let me introduce myself. My name is Brad Loncar. I'm a biotech investor, and I'm not Italian. Tonight I am. I was not born Italian. But a few years ago, I met a very smart and very hardworking entrepreneur, Pierluigi Paracchi, who now has his company listed on the NASDAQ, the world capital of biotech company listings. And I wanted to help him, and I've become an advisor to his company, and it has really opened my eyes to Italian innovation. And Italian innovation is making news and helping patients today. So for example, one of the co-founders of Genenta Science, Pierluigi's company, is Luigi Naldini. And one of the things that he's world famous for is, we call him the father of the lentivirus. He and his colleagues were the first scientists to discover how to use the lentiviral vector for gene transfer. And this summer in the United States, the first 2 gene therapies that use the lentiviral vector were approved for a disease called beta thalassemia and cerebral adrenoleukodystrophy. They are 2 of the first big gene therapies to be approved in the United States and to be changing patients' lives. And so that's just one example of the innovative work, the innovative science that's happening in Italy today that's really making waves globally. And we're here for the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. And when people ask me, what is the theme for you of this year's conference, it's an easy answer. I say globalization, globalization, globalization. Especially with the last few years that we've had, sadly, with COVID all around the world, countries and regions everywhere understand the importance of biology and medicine to the future. And foreign companies and Italian companies are at the forefront of that globalization and making global news. So on Sunday night, the most important news, I believe, that was announced at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference was by an Italian company. Chiesi bought Amrit for $1.5 billion. And it just goes to show how Italian companies are a force in that globalization that's happening in our industry. So with that, we've got a great panel tonight. And first, we're going to watch a brief video about the life sciences ecosystem in Italy. And it's going to be presented by President Bogetti of Cluster Alisei.
Good afternoon to the participants of the Italy on the Move 2023, a side event organized by ITA during the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. I apologize for not being present in person among all of you. Unfortunately, I had to cancel my participation and record this video, as in these days I'm involved with a series of institutional meetings with the newly settled government related to the well-known Medvedev payback issue. Let me first introduce what Alisei is. Alisei is the Italian technological cluster wanted by the Ministry of University and Research a few years ago as an integrator between the public and private entities of the complex life science Italian ecosystem. Alisei is a vast social structure with prestigious members like the 5 National Industrial Associations, the 4 National Research Institutes, and the 14 local entities expressed by their regional administrations. Alisei embraces the view of becoming a protagonist and a promoter of the needs and development potential of the whole sector. The cluster is committed to ensuring inclusion and openness to its action as much as possible. Life science is a strategic sector in Italy, a key asset to allow the resilience of the country to different challenges. Such a role implies the definition and universal access to treatments, the healthcare sustainability facing demographic changes and unpredictable and sudden shocks like the recent pandemic. The value chain is also strategic to the competitiveness of the economic system, for the added value it generates and for its pivotal role in research and innovation. The value chain of healthcare, with all its players, must be a strategic partner of the economic and social system, not only for satisfying the demands of citizens, but also for its enabling role across all economic social activities, as it represents an engine of development for the entire country. This side event aims to focus on small and medium enterprises and startups, enabling their growth through innovation financed by the attraction of investments. To set the frame, let me briefly give you a perimeter of the value of this industrial sector. In Italy, life science summed to 250 billion euro in turnover in 2021, 105 billion in added value, and 10.6% of Italian GDP, and 1.8 million of workers. The R&D of pharmaceutical, medical device, and biotech industries is equal to approximately 3 billion euro per year, 11% of the total income. Alongside industry figures, Italy stands out for the high quality of its scientific research. Italian research has been confirmed as one of the most productive globally in terms of publication and citations. The vitality of Italian research also resulted in intense patenting activity. 2,000 life science patents were filed in 2020 at Italian Patent and Trademark Office, with a consistent growth of plus 45% compared to 2009. The number of venture capital and private equity investments in high-tech companies in Italy confirms the competitiveness of life science and attractiveness of the ecosystem. In 2020, life sciences were the primary investment target with 68 deals, 40% of the total. These investments also show a consolidated growth trend in recent years. Since 2017, life sciences have steadily been the leading sector in terms of the number of investment in high-tech companies, with a growth of plus 143%. Italy is also facing a critical challenge driven by its demographic evolution that will bring 60% of Italians to be over 60 years of age in 2030. Italians are the second longevity population in the world, but unfortunately, the quality of the last 10 years of their life is one of the worst among the developed countries. For this reason, Italy must place healthcare at the heart of its political agenda. The recovery plan funds, namely the Mission 6, healthcare, and Mission 4, research, represent a unique opportunity in the next 3 years. Since the public-private partnership will enable the choice of projects to be financed by these funds, ALISEI, by its nature and scope, will play a fundamental role in this game. Thank you for your attention.
If I can please ask my panelists to take their seats. So while everyone's getting settled, I just like to highlight one thing that I'm very impressed by and very proud of is we have a great mixture in this crowd today. We have a lot of colleagues who have traveled from Italy, who are the innovators who are bringing their innovation here to the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. We also have a lot of US investors, a lot of US business development people, a lot of representatives from companies who may be looking for innovation that can be found from Italy. And the goal of this event tonight, and the theme of my panel is, I want to be a connector, and I want everyone in this room, depending on which side you are, to understand how to make that connection going forward. So if you're the Italian company and you're looking to be a big part of that globalization that's happening in our industry, and you want to succeed in the United States and other players, what do you need to know? What can we do to arm you to achieve the highest success? And I also want our US investor, company, and business development friends to walk out of here today having a strong feel for Italian innovation. And if you want to act on it, if you want to look for innovation, if you want to partner with an Italian company, to really understand how to do that. So I'm going to start with Italian companies succeeding in the United States. And I'd like to start with my colleague and my friend Pierluigi from Genenta Science, because he's really the beacon. His company, Genenta Science, is the only today Italian company listed on the NASDAQ stock exchange. I am so proud of his achievement in making that happen. And he's laid the groundwork and showed other companies how to achieve that. And so let's talk about that today, Pierluigi. So in your journey as an entrepreneur, and as you were deciding where to list, you had a decision. Do you want to list on a European exchange? do you want to list on NASDAQ? Walk us through like the decision process that you went through and how you ultimately ended up on NASDAQ. And throughout that process, what were the things that were challenges for you from being from outside of our country? And also, what were the advantages, do you think, that you had in your pocket coming at this from a different perspective that helped you achieve that success?
Wow, I have an hour. So first of all, I think that it's important to learn to swim because you need to cross the ocean. This is not easy. But anyway, when we discuss a lot about the market, and NASDAQ is for biotech companies is the more it's very competitive, but there is so many competencies that can really understand the quality of the science, even if you are an early stage company or preclinical, or in our case, early clinical company. And I think that when you want to decide where to find the right place for go public for an IPO, it's important to see where your peers are. And in this market, there are maybe after last year less competition because a lot of companies are not performing very well. Anyway, there are all my peers are listed here in the US, not only US company but also European company that wanted to increase their value here. So, and this creates the opportunity to have so many bankers, so many investors, so many people specialized in understanding the science that really can make the difference and can create value.
And coming at it from perspective of coming from Italy, what were some of the challenges that you overcame, maybe that a U.S. company might not be challenged with, and what were the assets that you had, coming from with a different mindset and from a different place that you think helped you achieve this?
We leverage a lot on the quality of the science. As you said at the beginning of our conversation, so Genenta is the last step of a journey long 25 years. And in Italy, in Milano, not a lot of people are aware that first ever ex vivo gene therapy has been approved not in Silicon Valley or in Boston, but in Milano, thanks to the collaboration between San Raffaele Hospital and Genenta is a spin-out from San Raffaele Hospital and a multinational company. We have top scientists. I see here in the audience that there is Maria Grazia Roncarolo. Where is Maria Grazia? And she's one of the mother of the cell therapy in the world. You mentioned Nandini, that is well known as the father of the lentivirus technology. And this is an incredible track record, high quality science, and this was what we used to enter in this market, present ourselves, and we leverage a lot on the quality of the science.
Excellent. I'd like to introduce the audience to a friend of mine, Patrick Nosker. He's the head of research at a hedge fund in New York called Affinity Asset Advisors. And he gets embarrassed when I say this, but I truly mean it. He is the most impressive and smartest investor that I know. He's already a big name in our industry. He will be the biggest name in biotech investing in the coming years. He is truly that smart. So Patrick, we're here at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. You've probably had 30 company meetings, maybe 50 company meetings this week. As you meet with companies, what advice do you have to them to succeed when they're sitting across the table from you? And you meet with companies from all over the world. Is there anything that you notice that, foreign companies do different? Or any advice that you might have to foreign companies that, if they're new to kind of the U.S. biotech sector and being in front of global investors, maybe something that they could, piece of advice to help them succeed more so that when they're on the other side of the table of the smartest investor in biotech, that they succeed and they get the investment. What advice do you have for companies?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I think for investing in biotech, the most important thing is the science, right? Because if the science doesn't work, nothing else matters. So being able to clearly articulate what you have, why it's differentiated, and where it could serve a place in the market is really important. I think also, as you mentioned, listing in the U.S. is certainly advantageous for U.S. investors. The U.S. has pretty strict requirements with regards to auditing and reporting and maintaining a firewall between non-public information and investors. And it's a lot easier for us to get comfortable when we know that they're abiding by SEC requirements. We do have some ex-US investments that aren't listed here, but for the most part, it's very difficult to convince our investment committee that it's worthwhile to take that risk. So yes, US listing is certainly a really good pro. But I think the most important thing for biotech, whether it's a private or public company, is to be able to clearly tell the story and stand up to the scientific rigor that you're subject to. I think there are a lot of very smart investors. Most people that do what we do have, many years of education, PhD or MD or PharmD, and they understand how to rip apart any sketchy data, right? They know how to find the holes in the story, and being able to already know the answers to the questions that will be asked is really important.
And, I feel like as an investor myself, 10 years ago, the places that we looked for science were very crowded. We looked for science out of like Harvard or Memorial Sloan Kettering, a handful of places, and I feel like today there's so much innovation coming from all over the world that it's like day and night different. Do you experience that as well?
Absolutely. I think we've seen a number of successes outside the sort of conventional VC hubs, right? Just as an example, right, lecanemab just got approved. That was a European discovery, right? Something where very few people that do what I do were looking. Just in Italy, for hemophilia, the Padua variant of one of the factors was discovered, and that will likely be the gene therapy construct of choice for hemophilia B. So I think there's plenty of great science and discoveries that aren't yet in Boston or San Francisco, right? And being able to identify those and leverage them and then connect them to the right investor base quickly is key, because the most important thing I think for the U.S. is IP, and the longer you take to try to get that idea put forward to have funding, the worse off you are. So being able to quickly execute, quickly tell the story is important. But yeah, plenty of great science elsewhere. Italy is I was just joking that a lot of the scientists 500 years ago, 400 years ago, they have Italian last names, right? And there's definitely a lot of great science that goes on out there, and so I'm sure there's a lot of hidden fruit.
Great. So Patrick comes at this from the perspective of like a stock market investor, and it's key to make an impression there. We also have a great panelist, Dawn Bell, from a multinational pharmaceutical company, Novartis. And Dawn has a long career, and she's been the global development head of strategic partnerships. Science is a very partnership-oriented activity, and you vet companies from all over the world. What has been your impression of European and Italian innovation? And as somebody from a pharmaceutical company like that, what do you look for in the people sitting across the table from you? And what have you seen makes for the best strategic partnerships? What is it that people bring to the table that make it succeed to the fullest?
Thanks, Brad, for the question. And I guess I'd also add, in addition to having been at Novartis for 10 years and then partnering for the past 2 years, for 5 years I've actually been a mentor to seed stage companies in North America and Europe. And through the Gold Track program and the Creative Destruction Lab, I've met so many seed stage companies, including 2 of my Italian founders who are sitting in the back row back there that I've worked with in the past, who are doing amazing work. So it is absolutely true that science knows no borders, right? So great science can occur everywhere. I think it is well known that Italy punches above its weight, if I may use an American colloquialism, in gene therapy and many other fields of science. Clinical trials, so we have some of our best clinical trial sites when I was working on our heart failure program, in Italy. And what we look for, I think the most important thing for companies to understand when you're partnering with a very large pharma company is things need to be strategic. And so really understanding what that company is looking for, how it complements their pipeline, and how it fits their commercial structure in terms of where this drug might be marketed. And then the other thing that I think a lot of companies maybe miss when partnering with very large pharma is materiality. So if your asset is a relatively small asset or a rare disease asset and that company doesn't have rare disease in the strategy, that product that you're developing may not be large enough for them to have interest. So, Novartis was an example, is looking for at least $1 billion peak revenue, global peak revenue, and sometimes that's, depending on, the complementarity with other parts of the portfolio, may not be a large enough revenue stream. And then the reason is that, we're looking for mid to, mid-single digit growth, we'll call it, I think was the guidance. And we have a $50 billion revenue stream. So to grow on that kind of base, you need larger products to do that because you don't have the bandwidth to put together too many smaller products to make that kind of growth. And so I think the economics and the strategy are really important for companies to consider when approaching partners. But again, great science, great data, knows no borders.
One of the things that I'm fascinated by is how do small companies get in touch with large companies like yours? If there's an entrepreneur that's in this room or sitting in a lab in Milano right now, who wants to partner with Novartis, what are the steps for them to reach out and call you? I know that's a very simple question, but people want to know that.
I wish I had a simple answer. It depends, right? So I think the best way, and I think you had talked about this in our prep session, is a warm introduction. So using your network, and if as a company, use your board's network. I think people, sometimes younger companies, I feel, don't really leverage their boards as well as they could. And so that is absolutely the best way, is to get a warm introduction and to help someone help you to navigate. If you are sitting in a lab somewhere and you're more an academic, getting your research out there at conferences, meeting with scientists, our scientists do go to conferences, getting in, connecting with scientists with your published peer-reviewed data is going to be very helpful because it's the science, especially for very early work, it's the scientist opinions on the quality of the research that will really drive the day more than the business development relationship.
And Patrick, I'd like to go back to you. You talked about how science is king. And one of the things that I think is really important is medical meetings. And one of the great things about medical meetings is I think that smaller players can get noticed at medical meetings. If you've got a poster, the best investors are walking around the poster hall, trying to find the hidden secret of the medical meeting. So that's an important way for people to get noticed on a global scale. So why don't you talk a little bit about the importance of medical meetings and getting noticed that way?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So, in thinking about companies that we're invested in, about half we find out about through the banking side, right? They're ones that we meet at JP Morgan or other banking events. The other half are ones that we find organically at medical meetings. So, there was as an example, one of our private companies, we saw a really interesting poster at ASH one year, and we seeded the company, and now it's going to raise their Series B. And that's something that everyone else missed, basically, because they weren't looking for it. It's not always a preclinical asset or something like that. Sometimes you have pharma projects that get abandoned because they don't hit that $1 billion a year revenue stream, and it gets out-licensed, right? And maybe a company takes over, presents the old pharma's data, and it's intriguing, and it was never shown before because pharma companies don't need to show their phase 1 data, right? It's not material to them. So being able to see these things in the context at a medical meeting, hearing seeing who's coming to the poster, who's interested, are there physicians that go to the poster presenter and say, I want to use this, how do I get a person on a trial? That's really exciting to us.
Yeah, And medical meetings are truly international events. Like there's no club or admission, like they're welcome to all who have great science. So it is a fantastic and really important way to get noticed. So I want to mention, by the way, we'll have time at the end for Q&A, but I like to keep panels, dynamic. So if anyone in the audience has a question about something we've already said or that something we say, please raise your hand and we're happy to give you a wireless mic and just kind of keep this interactive. So I'd like to kind of turn the floor over to some of our Italian company friends and to really highlight the innovation and the work that they're doing so that our U.S. investors and company representatives and business development folks have a better idea of all of the amazing work that's happening in Italy today. I want to start with Fabrizio. And I mentioned the biggest news, I think, of JP Morgan, at least Sunday night, was this large acquisition by an Italian company of a rare diseases company. I know you focus a lot in orphan indications. Why don't you introduce yourself, your company, and highlight some of the innovative work that you're doing?
Thanks. CT is an ophthalmic company, so we really focus on eye care. And alongside the traditional business that is retail, pharma, and some kind of devices, we are on a journey to achieve a potentially transformational accomplishment for a company of our size. And that is the development of an orphan drug that has a couple of indications which we're already where we already received the designation by the US FDA. We are halfway through the approval process in Europe with the European Medicine Agency, and we believe that, as usual, the biggest market potential is here in the US. It's an ultra-rare disease, but still there's a higher medical need. And coming back to the point that was raised by some of the panelists, as long as the science is there, the unmet need is there, and you have a good IP, you have some exclusivity, really, this is where you should focus to look at US as an opportunity to make not only a difference for the company, but most importantly for the patients. And this is where I believe we can play a role. But of course, there are the challenges that were mentioned earlier on in terms of how you get to the US. And that's where partnering is one of the options that we are considering. And that's one of the reasons why we're here.
And you mentioned that you have orphan drug status here in the United States with the US FDA. Can you talk about, as a foreign company, what it's been like, collaborating with the FDA and how easy or difficult that has been? Like, what has been your experience?
Well, of course, this is a first for a company like ours, as it is a first working with the EMA to get that approval. And I guess we still are at an early stage as we plan to file the NDA later in the year. So far, it's been an interesting journey because what I would mention about the difference that we have experienced is that when you deal with U.S. authorities, you probably, I wouldn't say know what to expect, but the process is more, I would say, clear in some respect. Whereas navigating the complexities of Europe makes perhaps a harder return on the investment. You do a lot in Europe, but then you have a fragmented system, whilst in the US you appreciate the fact that it's more of a single market than Europe is. And of course, the commercial opportunity is much bigger.
And I think another key point, if people aren't familiar with this, is FDA and EMA both belong to something called ICH. And ICH is designed to harmonize regulatory standards by members that participate in that. And so to develop a drug in Europe and to develop a drug in the United States and to get it through regulators is a very similar process. And so if you're learning how to succeed in Europe through the EMA, you've already won 3/4 of the battle because from a regulatory standard, they're collaborating so that it's harmonized and so that they have the same standards and the same playbook for drug development. And I think it makes it a lot easier for European companies to succeed in the United States and for US companies to succeed by having Europe a part of their global development process. So Paulo, why don't I turn it over to you? Please introduce yourself and talk about the work that you're doing.
Yeah, we are a little bit ambitious because we are in the gene therapy field, but we are fostering an approach which I call gene therapy 2.0, because we are not now dealing with the monogenic disease, where you simply replace a defective gene, but we are dealing now with complex diseases such as type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis. So the idea is to utilize gene therapy as a immunomodulatory tool to revert the root cause of these diseases. We have also another program in CAR T cells for myeloid disorders, but that's the first program that we will launch in the clinic next year, is the most ambitious one. I think that for a company like ours in Italy, I think it would be important maybe, because everybody understands that US is an opportunity. No? Pierluigi clearly paved the way for all of us, and but I'm not sure that is as clear as for US investors that maybe Italy and Europe do represent an opportunity. And this is because of many reasons. The first is that the level of science is at least comparable. In some specific areas, we might be even better than the US one. So it's not a problem of going into a region where the science is not as good as here. But it's an opportunity because valuation of the companies is usually much less than in the United States. So my company here will be probably valued double. The clinical development is much cheaper. So if you want to, not only the cost per patient, but also the overhead that institutions apply to run a clinical trial is completely different as compared to the United States. So you buy something cheaper and the cost of development are much cheaper. So this represents an opportunity. And the more US investor comes to Italy, to Europe, the more they could actually bridge the gap to allow companies such as Genenta to go to NASDAQ in an easier way. So I think this should be considered as a way of looking at these kind of opportunities, maybe in a more global way.
I notice a lot when I meet with Italian companies that gene therapy comes up a lot. Yourself, Pierluigi's technology is very gene therapy. What is it about Italy that is the pushing the envelope of science? That's where medicine is going. What is it about Italy that all of that gene therapy science seems to be coming out of there as a region?
I think that, as Don mentioned, is not the only field, because, for instance, cardiology is we have very, very important clinical centers. My experience is in gene therapy since the past 20 years, and Maria Grazia Roncarolo, Claudio Bordignon, Luigi Nandini were all key players in developing this field in Italy. And actually it was a journey to which I participated from one angle that allowed and made a very important point historically in Italy. So it was the occasion to put together top-level science, so academia, top-level science, together with, for instance, manufacturing capabilities that were at that time developed in the same research institution. A charity, so Teleton, was involved and helped a lot this process. And these different players then was the key to become traction for big pharma. So that was a nice story because, and I think this is one of the reasons why gene therapy is important in Italy, because we have this track record And we arrived, for the first time we got approval, even if in the States the story is different. The narrative is different. They forget about us.
Patrick, I'm going to put you on the spot. So Paolo mentioned how his company, he believes, has a much lower valuation than it would if he was based here in the United States. We talk a lot about that. We sometimes call that the European discount. You know, smart investors take advantage of arbitrage opportunities. And I'm just wondering if you think that that spread over time as our industry becomes more global might shrink. And also, can you explain, like, why does that exist? Like, science is science. Why should it be valued differently somewhere else than maybe it's valued here?
All right, how do I not get myself in trouble here? Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I think the spread was pretty wide. You know, now we have a substantial portion of the U.S. listed biotech companies trading under book value, so under their cash on their balance sheet. So it's hard to find many things that are discounted more than that in the U.S. right now. That being said, you know, I think it's a cyclic thing. It'll probably come back where there'll be a nice arbitrage opportunity again. One of the things I've heard, and I can't speak to this directly, is, you know, I think there's a reason that a lot of the high-performing biotech companies are based in the U.S., and part of it is the salaries here are the highest in the world, right? And so the best scientists want to leave wherever they're from and come work here because they can get paid more money. And so there's probably some bias in terms of, you know, who are the best researchers, and some of them end up in the U.S. That being said, there are plenty of outstanding biotech companies in Europe, you know, the pharma companies, right? Novartis, Novo Nordisk, Roche, you know, Biogen got probably their biggest drug ever from Europe. And so, you know, I think there's still certainly a lot of opportunities. Some people just want to stay where their families are, et cetera. But I think the idea of you pay a PhD in the U.S., $150,000 a year, or you go to the UK or Germany or Italy and you pay half or a third of that, you know, why are the best scientists going to stay there if they could come here, right? And I think people, that's on their minds.
Because Italy is the best place to live.
The food's better.
So Don,
Just a quick, very quick thing about the valuation of U.S. companies. I think one of the problems, and to me, maybe I'm wrong, of course, but to me is a distortion, is because the burn rate of U.S. companies is huge as compared to European ones. So if you spend 100 million per year, then clearly your value today is going to be much more effective than an Italian company that spends maybe 10 million per year.
You're not wrong, but there are efficient cash-burning U.S. companies too, and I think those get an advantage in the market. There's a company that had the first really interesting data set in NASH that I think has like 20 employees, and they'll file for approval in this half of the year. So I think there are examples of ones that don't fit that criteria, but for sure there are a lot of companies that seem to have 10 C-suite executives despite not having a product in clinical trials yet. You know, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
But if I may add, we should not forget about prices.
Yeah.
You know, the prices you have here in the US compared to what you have in Europe is perhaps a magnitude of difference. And then you have a single market, you have the biggest pool of patients compared to the, again, fragmentation that Europe has, because getting a product approved in Germany and getting a price in Germany doesn't mean that you're going to get a similar price in France or Italy. Whilst once you are supported by a private sector here, it's a different story. In Europe, all medicines and devices are funded by public governments. And that's where you have all these issues like the buyback. That's the reason why Massimiliano budget was not here. When you get to a certain level of sales, and you're asked by the government to pay back some money because you've done your job. So again, I don't want to go deeply into that, but really the patient has higher value for a company in the US than it does in Europe.
Yeah.
And that drives all of these salaries, valuations, exit strategies, funds. So this is something that to me one of the most important factors to consider.
Yeah, and I think that pricing difference is most distinct in the rare and orphan disease indications, where here in the United States, the prices can be, so exorbitantly high. Let's talk about Euromed, Pierluigi. Tell us about Euromed and some of the innovation that's coming out of your company.
Thank you, Lord. Thanks, everyone. And first of all, let me bring the greetings from Farm Industria and on behalf of my presidency of the small and medium enterprise that you represent, that are one of the part of the backbone of the Italian healthcare manufacturing, and the reason why we are really proud to represent and this important stage. Let me thank you, of course, Sergio Strozzi, Alberto Cito, and for hosting us in such an amusing place that we receive for the first time, and not only as a citizen, but as an entrepreneur of the pharmaceutical and healthcare business. I'm really happy to know that in other part of the world we can have such kind of occasion where we can have meetings and we can represent the Italian overall. So, going back to the company, Euromed is a part of the Petone Group. It is a conglomerate that runs pharmaceutical business along all the pharmacy chain. So we are involved in manufacturing, in packaging, logistics, and so on. And a few years ago, 10 years ago, we started to rebrand part of the business under the Euromed Pharma name among Italy, Germany, Spain, Ireland, US, where we opened the company in November 2019, and Singapore more than 10 years ago. What is the main aim of the company? We run three different parts of the business. First of all, we try to help pharmaceutical companies that wants to launch on the market new products, to source and to fulfill, of course, products for the competitors, both from Europe and from the US. You know that the one of the topics that we have discussed before, we mentioned the sustainability of the price and how the government could be able to pay such a high prices, mentioning before you explained the orphan drugs. There is a huge momentum, in my opinion, that of course the pharma company and the pharmaceutical company want to invest in both small molecule or the old molecule, trying to repurpose the new site indication that we were talking about Novartis and the company like Bristol are the ones that will launch again new products that found new site indication, even if we're talking about probably more than 50 years. And so we supply the stock from behind, sourcing from Europe, sourcing from the US, and sourcing from the Far East countries where we have a branch in Singapore. On the other hand, I used to travel to the US for more than 10 years, attending small conferences, big conferences like JP Morgan, Jefferies, Boston Biotech, CEO, and I get in touch with several CEO of small, medium enterprises that wants to launch on the market new products for unmet medical need. You know that the time to market in the US, it's really fast because the payers, not the government, but are the insurance company, the doctors, and so on. But when these companies want to launch the product over the European countries and they get approval by EMA, then they have to negotiate the price among the 27 European countries. And you know it's a really tough task to do this. But when you talk about products, only with few patients per each country, you don't have such kind of financial statement in order to build up from scratch or the company like the big ones. And so what we do, we manage in a full-time management. We are able to receive, to distribute, and to store products, and we try to manage in a full-time management business process in order to facilitate and to streamline the bridging between US and Europe, and using, hopefully, Italy as the main gateway for opening a new market around the European market.
Great, thank you. And we're getting close to time here. I want to make sure we give all our panelists time. Luca, tell us about your company and the things that you're working on.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm probably a different animal compared to my colleagues because my company is a medical device company. By the way, Italy, life science is not just pharma, we have also medical devices, so I'm glad to be the one representing today in this sector. We are are a young company. So I'm a material scientist by training. So my job was indeed bringing a technology that I developed with colleagues in the university and bringing to American product. So we developed electrodes for. We developed electrodes for neuromodulation and neuromonitoring. So they are invisible electrodes that are placed on the surface of the brain during brain surgery to test integrity between the motor cortex and the muscle during the removal of tumor, and also for neuromodulation. And we have now a product approved in Europe and the US. So we are just entering the American market. So for us, it's a very nice moment also to be here and to be investors now in this space.
Great, thank you. Well, we have some great Italian food and wine to enjoy, but before we do, I just want to check, does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments or anything to say about what they've heard tonight? Don't be shy. We're not going to have delicious food and wine unless one brave person. That's right. The first glass of wine goes to the first question. Just by a show of hands, I'm curious, how many of you in the audience are friends visiting the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference from Italy?
What about Italians living here?
That's the second question. How many are Italians living here? And how many are U.S. friends? That's great. Well,
You didn't ask how many are both.
how many are both? All right. Well,
Thank you.
well, again, the goal of this evening is to make connections. So let's have some fun, let's enjoy some food and wine and mingle, and let's make a lot of those connections tonight. Thank you.